Good morning. Today is, I don't even have a little calendar right here, right at the moment. It's a new year. Today is Sunday, January 8th, 2023, and it has veered a long time since I've spoken to the camera. I don't believe this video will be in line specifically with a new year. Might do that one later. Setting intentions and reflection on last year. So I've recently made another acquaintance, just digital, who shares similar thoughts and ideas, and we had a conversation. She shared with me a small list of resources, and it struck me as curious. Here was a list of, 8 or 10 people. I knew one, and after I researched, I realized I was familiar with a second one. But yet another treasure trove of good material. And when I refer to resources, we can think of it as an individual and his or her collective works. I've spoken many times about Passio and Michael Tessarion, etc. These guys are wonderful resources in the expansiveness of the information that they have shared, their scholarly efforts, etc. And it was interesting because the one person I knew, I had just discovered within the last few weeks. His name is Sevan Bomar. I've just gotten into it. His work, very, very deep, very intricate. But this isn't about his work so much as how it struck me, how there seems to be, in actuality, a lot of good resources out there. I mean, as I continue down this path of knowledge, I'm constantly unearthing both past and present, past being deceased, but more importantly present, this plethora of resources, YouTube channels, etc., etc. And then when you look at some of these creators, they've got quite a good following, which I consider anything over 100,000 is like substantial. Okay? And I found a lot, and each person I meet that has done some work themselves, even if it's just research, has this pool of resources as well. And sometimes there's some overlap, sometimes not. And these folks have a lot of followers. And as I saw her list, I was just like, huh. A lot of good information out there. Why isn't the world still a better place? What's missing? Okay? If you've got these individual creators and they're putting out authentic, good, rightful, truthful information, what the fuck is still going on? What is still wrong? A few different explanations I come away with. First and foremost, it's always important to remember, your perception is not reality, at least not in its totality. It is merely your personal perspective. And while truth itself is absolute in that it is unchanging, it cares not whether you come to accept or realize it. You could think of relative truth in terms of the portion of which you have discovered, but not relative in terms of it being true or not, independent of or dependent on your perspective. So, her perspective is not reality. is my perspective that there seem to be a lot of good resources providing the truth, providing pieces of the puzzle, big pieces, small pieces, that these scholars that have spent their whole life have nearly put it together upon themselves, within themselves, what's going on. Is that just my perspective, or is there really a lot of good resources? Is the potential there for us to figure out what's going on? Okay, the other big piece of this opinion perspective is the world really still messed up, right? I'm not going to go into a long diatribe, but I think there's ample current event evidence that would suggest things are not all right. There is, at best, a massive amount of flux right now, and clearly a procession and progression of what we'll just term the bad guys and what they're trying to accomplish, right? You can call it Great Reset if you want to put it under a single banner, etc. I think very hard for someone to convince me or convince anyone or themselves that all is well right now. 2020 is any indication. Okay, we'll circle back to this. So, at least to set the parameters as far as perception and reality. Okay. If you ever watched the channel, I was going to say old school, After School, brilliant. The whiteboard marker animations, drawing out what's being narrated. These are some beautiful philosophical ideas being shared, some by folks past, some current. It's got a lot of views. I feel like if you watched every single one, you could put together a big amount of the puzzle of what the hell is going on. Why does there seem to be a lacking of proof of concept? Why does it feel like there's not more action being taken? Why is the world still so fucked up? Another part of the explanation, outside of it's just merely my perception of what's happening, is perhaps we are at the beginning of a change, and it's so early on that it is hard to see the fruits of that labor yet. Okay? What would those fruits be, right? In a as close to objective way of defining them as possible. This would link back to previous videos where I've discussed, are we really waking up? Okay? And then how I differentiate between waking up and activating. You know, you can still be paralyzed in bed but be awake. Activated would be getting out of bed. It would be taking action. Activate, same root word. Okay? Third piece of the trivium. Thoughts, emotions, actions. Input, analysis, output. It's the output part. Okay? It's the generative. It's what you give birth to. It's the baby Jesus and the Holy Trinity. Okay. We would see more action, I believe. So is it possible we are at the very, very tip of the spear point in terms of the fruits of this information? Now, a lot of this information is coming from things written and recorded quite a while ago. People that are past, people that are long past, that researched and provided pieces of the puzzle that either fell upon deaf ears or just didn't reach enough people in its time. And now we can look back at the collected works of those that provided truth and supplement them with this new wave of energy, this new wave of awakening within its own right. People unearthing, rediscovering their interest in the truth, amounts of channels. Every time I find something new, YouTube will give me, some suggested videos to watch. And I'll be honest, I'm dubious about any video that's got over 1 million views. I really am. Even the ones that seem to have good, truthful information. But it strikes me, if all these producers that have hundreds of thousands of people following them, and they are in fact real followers, and these are in fact real views, right? I can see my metrics being flawed, but it's we have to go on in order to get a sampling of the information that might exist out there and its relative reach. Okay, a lot of caveats here. But if all this information out there, what is missing? Why have we been unable? Why have more people? Why isn't anyone putting all the pieces together and creating these pockets of utopia? Right? Why isn't it better? Well, I think people are selective in what they consume and don't realize the totality of the occulted, the hidden information that's out there. And not only its totality, but the necessity of pulling on each one of those threads in terms of coming to accept, as I've expressed earlier, that 99% of what you've been told is a lie. And letting all those paradigms drop. And what is this action that I speak of? What am I expecting to see? What would be proof of concept? As the fiery John Bush has so aptly coined the expression, it's exit and build. It is demonstrating non-participation in the current system by removing oneself from it in its totality, or as close thereto as possible, in a series of events. It's exiting the system and building parallel systems, frameworks, right? Health, education, economics, finance, defense, blah, 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 blah. All the things that they have us trapped under in the big industry terminology. Okay? But, very important, as I just mentioned, the exit in totality, right? How long can you keep one foot, one toe in the current system? And certainly you will have such limited success if you only exit one piece of it, right? Why is this not happening more in its totality? What is preventing this action? There's a good chance that all these people providing the pieces of the puzzle, that it's so disparate that it takes a lot of work for someone to turn over each of these pieces of the puzzle, see how they fit, consume the information, ingest, digest, and grow from it. It is a lot of work. It is, as it's been aptly termed by Passio, it's the one great work. Ultimately improving oneself so that you can help others. Why are people plateauing? Why are they only going part way on the path? Is it because they think they've reached the top, or they have chosen their plateau to be the top? What would these fruits look like? What would the action look like? Now, obviously, I'm speaking from a vantage point of my surroundings, the United States, and as a representative subset of the Western world, right? One could argue, Tony, what you're describing already exists, albeit in very finite areas. the jungles of the Amazon and the deserts and the bush of Africa, there are still lingering traces of the culture, tradition, myth of the native peoples, their symbiosis and harmony with nature. I would not disagree. I would applaud their existence, their ability to hold on in the face of what's happening. The unfortunate circumstance is, given our current situation, the ability for their version of life to be the export of their country is unlikely. In other words, for better or for worse, the Western world is the dominant system. And so it will be the tools and mechanisms of the Western world that will continue to be impressed and oppressed upon the others. So these are great examples. They need to be lifted up, examined, understood, and hopefully propagated. But will they be the actual source of that? In other words, are the Amazonians going to get iPhones and internet, record themselves, record their wisdom to share it with the masses of the world? Because that's what's at stake right now, the entirety of the planet. That is unlikely. So it will remain incumbent upon those with access to the current information tools, vis-a-vis the internet, and its ability to share information, is incumbent upon those with those tools at their disposal to be the ones to share the information until we reach a point where we are so in touch with one another that the ability simply to speak with each other in person, in the flesh, reestablishes itself as the norm of communication, word of mouth. When information's traveling that hot and that fast, then it doesn't matter the point of origin, it can't be stopped. But given the ingrained nature of technology, the internet as a tool of dispersing information is kind of the platform we're going to be working from. Okay? I wish it was the other way around. And, of course, until more people can activate their genetic structure to remember the inherent gifts we have in terms of the extrasensory toolkit, specifically in this case, telepathy, the ability to communicate directly from one person to another. Okay? That's what we're working towards. Ultimately, that is a great example of proof of concept that our fruits are manifesting from our labor. So again, in case you feel lost, as I continue to discover a plethora of resources and dive into their in-depth information, it certainly seems as though we have the knowledge at our disposal, and yet the world seems to be in misery. Why is this? Why aren't we waking up and activating on a greater scale? And what would that look like? How would we know? What are the fruits of that labor? I believe the relationships people have with Mother Nature would be a strong indication of that. In just the same way, I would believe we are waking up if McDonald's could no longer boast, what does it say now, 99 billion served? If they were to go out of business because there was no demand for their shite food. And in place of that, more people were growing their own food, even though that's just a piece of it, right? those that are exiting might be hell-bent on homesteading. But do they grasp that the religion that they follow is still a distorted version? There's ultimately a prison that's entrapping them every time they walk into their house of worship. Okay. This video is as much dissertation for you to listen to as it is for me an ability to tease out this massive problem, try to find a solution, or at the very least an understanding of what is holding us back. And if we are at the very spear point of some change, and there's reason to believe from an energetic perspective, from a astrological perspective, the cycles of everything, right? The 26,000 year cycle, these other ones I've been reading about with parallel Earth and this position and stargates here, and etc., etc. It seems like more people are vibrating or oscillating at a higher level and all that kind of stuff. We might be entering a new age in terms of potential here for consciousness to raise, which would be amazing. But there's still a piece missing here. It's the integration, which is the action, right? Spend all your time researching. A, you still have to take action, and B, you need to share it with other people or provide enough of an example for others to view and replicate, for that to spread. Okay? It's the necessity for the individual along the path to constantly remind oneself that despite all the information you have, there may still be a piece missing to continue that search for that knowledge, so that it can become transmuted into the wisdom of that knowledge. Anyway, I'll try to leave this on a higher note. I have every reason to believe we have this capability to execute successfully on this process. Okay? But it takes the continued effort of the integration of all the pieces for it to come together. And if you ever get lost in it, there's always a great starting base or home base to come back to, and that's nature itself. Ultimately, you want to cultivate the relationships of yourself, with the God source or Trog, and that can be thought of as in the invisible, but readily seen in the visible as nature, as Mother Nature. Come back to nature. Integrate yourself with her. What is your relationship like with the earth itself? Answers can be found there, and it's a great starting point, right? If you wish to exit the system, you realize that's just a construct that's been overlaid on top of something that already exists, which is Mother Nature, right? All those solutions are abundantly surrounding us in a different form than we're used to, right? Maybe a less immediately comfortable or convenient form, but there nonetheless. Food, medicine, shelter, etc. So that's a good starting point for people to try to integrate here. I'll continue to do my piece of turning over my part of turning over the puzzle pieces to see how it all fits together, to provide an example of what that looks like so that more people can become inspired, motivated, recognize the importance of dedicating oneself to the great work, the inner work. Happy New Year.